front of people about things that are close to my heart, I do get nervous. And this morning, in talking with God and submitting to being led by the Holy Spirit, I really had to make a decision of whether I was going to choose to please Him or worry about what you think I'm going to be saying today, okay? So I'm hoping that today that you hear with your hearts and know that I'm probably going to make you uncomfortable, and I'm going to get uncomfortable and probably emotional. And I'm going to use the words black people, and I'm going to use the words white people, and I'm going to be very transparent with you this morning. I just want to say first that I am so blessed to be here this morning. Having people like Emily and Nikki and Tom in my life over the last 2 years has helped me to feel, as a black woman, more whole than I felt in 34 years. People like Martha and Kathy and JR. I feel like I finally moved closer to a place of who I am, and I'm sad that it took me 34 years to be real about that, but it's the truth. So I want to talk today risk. Audre Lorde talking about risk is, it is the battle that I wake up with and sleep with and walk with and talk with and I'm saddled with all day. I don't know if this is what Emily would call preaching, but I'm going to tell a story today. And I'm going to talk about what this means for me, what Mike Brown, what Ferguson, what Darren Wilson, what it means for me. And know that this is my story, and this is not every black person's story, but this is what it looks like for me. So, I was born to a black woman and a white man in 1980, during a time where interracial relationships were starting to become more okay. But usually you didn't see a black woman and a white man. Usually it was a black man and a white woman. And my parents at the time attended a predominantly white church. My grandfather, my mom's dad, could not read or write. He was the breadwinner for the family. My grandmother was married to him. She was 20 years younger than he was. And she went through some hard things in their marriage. They had 6 children, one of which they lost when he was a teenager. He was my dad's best friend, and he drowned during their senior year, just after their senior year. My mom's family surrounded themselves with white people all of their life here. My grandfather was able to have a job, as he couldn't read or write, because of a white man. They went to an all-white church, which is where my parents went to. All of the children married white people. My family is very racially mixed. And my mom and dad knew each other from her older brother, who passed away, and then years later dated and were married, and that's where my brother and I came from. My dad's side of the family they're all Dutch and white and came from Pella, Iowa, and live in Holland, Michigan, and Grand Rapids, and we live here. So growing up, I went to a private school. I went to a private Christian school where my brother and I were the only black children in the entire school, from preschool to 8th grade. We spent much of our time with my dad's side of the family, and we spent a lot of time with my mom's side of the family, but black culture did not penetrate into my mom's side of the family in the way that I probably would have wanted or needed. And it definitely didn't penetrate in my dad's side of the family. They did a lot of missions work in other countries, but there was never race conversations in my family, ever. We loved everybody. So, as a child growing up in an all-white community, in an all-white school, with an all-white family, trying to filter messages that were sent to me about the color of my skin, about the texture of my hair, about the differences between myself and the white females in my classroom that were my friends. I remember when kids start having crushes on each other and going through that stage. I remember being told by boys that they would never date a black woman or black girl at the time. I remember coming home with that. And that felt normal to me. Like, what did I expect? That difference felt natural. What I expect. And so those differences were obviously always there for me. And there comes a point, and I was talking about this morning, in every family of a person of color where you become consciously aware of the color of your skin. There comes a point you can often remember in your childhood when that happens. For me, it was in second grade when all of the messages built up. And I came home to my dad crying because of how I'd been treated that day. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember I didn't feel comfortable and I was upset about how I'd been treated. And my dad, who was white, had to sit me down and try to explain to me why people wouldn't like me because of the color of my skin. And you ask a man to sit down and talk to his daughter about something that he doesn't understand himself, right? So then what happened is I went through school and I became afraid of people that looked like me. Those were the messages I was sent through media, through the community, through people we talked to. That was what I was sent. When it came time for me to go to, I was going to junior high, and I was going to public school, and I was terrified because black people were scary. I was going to get beat up. I was going to end up dealing with gangs, and I was going to probably endure some of the most horrific experiences of my life. That's the mental I had at 12 years old. And my parents, it wasn't like we talked about this. My parents, it wasn't like we said anything about this. But that was what internally I was going through. And I went to public school. And my experience was different. I didn't know the norms of black culture. I understood how to navigate in a white world, but I didn't understand how to navigate in a black world. And I was ostracized and made fun of and bullied and teased by my black peers because now I wasn't black enough. I'd gone from being too black to not being black enough, to not having a space that I fit, that I belonged, that I connected with. It just wasn't there. So then I had a lot of friends who were white. That's who I hung out with. And I became angry with people that looked like me. And then what happened was sometime during my senior year, I met a group of girls who were black, who took time to love on me and teach me, whose family took time to love on me and teach me. And their dad, who was like my second dad, passed away last year, and that was incredibly hard for me because I am where I am today because of him choosing to take time to be with me, right? And what happened was the shift for me personally went from hating the color of my skin to being angry with people who looked like me to then being frustrated with white people to being accepted by the black community to not feeling as a woman as though I was attractive to any of those groups. Talk about confusion, right? So where is my head? Where is my heart? Who am I as a person? I don't even know at that point. And I remember not feeling like I knew even what my favorite color was or my favorite food, or depended on who I was with in the moment, because the confusion for me was so great about who I was as a person. And something happens with women. We want to be loved and accepted. We want to be seen as equals. We don't want to be viewed as weak. We don't want to be treated any differently because of our sex. But I know for me, being rejected by what seemed like every group, I then tried to find a way to be accepted, which is often through your body. For me, it was, right? Because that's what society tells us is what is acceptable. It's the definition of beauty. It's the definition of acceptance. It's often the definition of love, which is incorrect. So I went through a cycle of horrible healing that was destructive internally, okay? So fast forward. I rode through my life on privilege because I understood how to play the game. I knew how to talk, knew how to walk, knew how to have conversation, I knew how to negotiate what I wanted. I knew how to appeal to the people who were in power, which were usually white people. I knew how to do that, so I used that to my advantage. Didn't know that's what I was doing, that's what I did. So I was 25 and learned that I was pregnant with my first child and was very excited. And I really, really wanted a boy because I had no business being a mom to a girl at that point. Just being real. I didn't want a girl. And so God said, okay, and he gave me a son. He knew me. And I had no idea what I was in for at that point as far as what it means to have a boy and what it means to have a black man that you're raising in this country. I had no clue. And I remember looking at him and feeling like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be myself. I don't even know who I am, let alone raise another person, right? So fast forward 8 years. He's 8 now. My son is smart. He's very, 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 very intelligent. Unless I'm asking him to do something he doesn't want to do. So, one time. He's very empathetic. He's very intuitive. He's very observant. I chose not to have discussions about race in my home because I wanted to see what his lens was going to be shaped like. I wanted to see what he was coming home with before I put my struggle and my perception and my lens on him. I didn't want to prepare him for my battle because my battle is totally different than his. And I didn't want to ill-prepare him for what he was going to be experiencing. So, 2 years ago, God began doing some things in my life and exposing me to people and exposing me to labs that helped me to get real with what I've experienced in my life. with the racism that I've experienced, the things that I go through on a daily basis, the thoughts that are in my head, the things that I see when I talk about privilege, when I look at privilege, the things that paralyze me, the little things that anger me, the stuff that I'm not willing to get real with or acknowledge or be uncomfortable with or talk about, the things that I'm afraid will cost me my job for talking about my reality. He started this in me, right? We talk about risk. This year for me has been all about him asking me, what are you willing to risk? As the head of your household, the only income earner in your home, are you willing to risk in order to say what you need to say, right? So I haven't talked to my son about race. He goes to predominantly black school, which I thought was going to be safe for him to not go through what I went through with the struggles with the color of his skin. And what I found was that there is nowhere that you can run from racism. It doesn't happen. Because even though he's in a predominantly black school, there is still conditioning that happens that comes out in our kids to each other, with each other, and they teach each other. So when my son comes home from school pictures, angry with me because I made him wear a button-down long-sleeve shirt, kind of like what Tom has on. Angry with me because he was teased and told only white men wear those shirts. Why are you wearing that here? He was angry with me. When my son comes home from my parents, who say to me, we need to talk with Jaden because he shared with us today that we had it easier because we're white. That's not me teaching him that. It's what he's hearing from his friends at school. It's what he's learning from the media. He's not seeing people that look like him. He's not seeing superheroes that are black. He's not seeing examples of the fact that he can be successful, that he can be productive, that he can contribute, that he matters in this world. He's not seeing that. Mom can only say so much. Mom's going to love him because, as he would say, he came out of my belly. That's why I love him, because I have to. That only goes so far with him. I can do all that I can, but I can't do everything. So I sheltered my son from Ferguson because, quite frankly, I don't know what to say about Ferguson. I don't know who to be angry with. I just know I'm angry. I don't know what happened. And with my conditioning, the fact that I still tend to lock my doors when I see a black man who looks homeless come down the street when I'm stopped at a light, I'm not sure I wouldn't have shot Mike Brown. Let's be real. If he was charging at me with my conditioning, with what I'm taught, I'm not sure I wouldn't have reacted the same way as Darren Wilson did. Let's be real. That's hard for me to say as a mother of a black son who might get angry enough one day to charge a cop. My child is 8. He is 5 foot tall, and he's 100 pounds. He's going to be just under 7 foot, if I'm lucky. Probably close to 300 pounds. Who's going to see him as a threat? Everyone. When he's 10, when he's 12, and he's almost 6 foot, and he's behaving like a 12-year-old, and people think he's 18 because of his height, who's going to see him as a threat? Everyone will see my child. My meek, little, soft, little, compassionate child will be seen as a threat. If he is in the wrong place at the wrong time by chance, if he goes to a gas station that's just been robbed and the cops show up, they're going to assume he was the one, my child. And as a mom, how do you do that? How do you swallow that and not choke? How do you teach them without failing? How do you do that? I don't know. So I sheltered my child from Ferguson because I didn't know what to say to him. I didn't know what to tell him. I feel sorry for Darren Wilson. The song that you sang expressed how I feel, because Darren Wilson has been conditioned to see my kid as a threat. He's taking the flack of all of the privilege in this country. He's taking all of the anger in this country. Is he at fault? I don't know. Did he perpetuate? I don't know. Has he enabled? I don't know. But what I do know is that this issue isn't just about him. And this issue is not his fault. This issue is a culmination of what we have been dealing with since the beginning of this country's existence that has not been dealt with. This issue it was the spark that lit the bonfire that started it all. So the night of the indictment announcement, or non-indictment, I should say, my son was home with me. I had just got home from teaching. Monday nights tend to be our late night because I teach on Monday nights. And I was trying to hurry to get home so I could turn on CNN and watch. So my son was up, my dad was there, my dad was leaving. I was trying to get the TV on before I missed it. And my son was in the room, and I turn it on, and he says, "What are they talking about, Mom?" So here comes the moment. I'm going to have to tell him about it. I'm going to have to explain it to him. I can't avoid it, right? So I try as politically correct as I possibly can. Because even though I'm aware, even though I have chosen to get real with my issues in my heart regarding racism, even though I'm being challenged to take risks to speak out, I still struggle every single day. So when I tried to be as politically correct as I could with my 8-year-old, he called me out on it. And he called me out in trying to protect his spirit in this issue, because I'm trying to explain this in a way that doesn't make him feel like every white person that he comes across hates him or thinks that he's a bad person or is angry with him. So I'm trying to do this as sensitively as I can. So I tell him, well, there was an officer who shot a young black man who wasn't armed, and a lot of people believe that he was shot because he was black. And they're letting us know right now if they're going to arrest him and send him to court to let a jury decide if he was guilty. Jaden says, okay. Well, they're going to do that, right? And I knew they weren't. Every black person in America knew they weren't. But how do you tell your 8-year-old that? That's not likely. So I said, well, we're going to see. So the news is on, it's playing, and the prosecutor read the 10 Commandments and the Declaration of Independence and all of the amendments and everything in between to say, we decided after we looked at ourselves that our officer did nothing wrong. That was his speech. That's what it felt like to me. We took a look at our issues and said, really no issues here. Sorry, America. So my son said, so they're what are they doing? Are they going to arrest him? And I said, no, honey, they're not. And he said, well, why not? I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't get this. It doesn't make sense to me. I watched his face go from hurt to angry to baffled to we need to go to Ferguson and protest, all in about 5 minutes, my 8-year-old. As he's starting to understand what is going on and that it could happen to him. And I said, well, honey, we can't go to Ferguson as I'm watching the riot start to unfold now. It's not safe for you. It's not safe for me. And he looked at me and he said, well, Mom, what would you want people to do if it were me? How would you feel if it were me? He's 8. He's already putting himself in those shoes, right? So I said, well, there's things that we can do here. So we started talking a little bit about that. And as I'm trying to figure out, so the next day I have to go to work. When things like Ferguson aren't happening, it's easier to put privilege in a box and shove it under the bed and ignore it all day and live your life and pretend it doesn't exist. When things like Ferguson are happening, it makes it that much harder to be silent and be quiet and tolerate issues of racism that happen on a daily basis, that happen regularly. Things that are said from people like, well, what do you expect when you steal cigars and charge the police? And it's really hard to be in a happy place when this is happening, right? So work was tough. And as I'm trying to figure out, okay, God, so where are we with this? Am I supposed to be angry? Am I supposed to turn the other cheek? I struggle with that verse. I struggle with that verse all the time of turning the other cheek. How many cheeks do I turn before I say this is enough? I have 34 years of feeling uncomfortable based on the way that I'm viewed by other people as soon as I walk in a room, as soon as I leave my home. How long do I not talk about that? And why is it that I have to be afraid that I'm going to lose my job for talking about that? My place of employment is fabulous, but for every black person or person of color in this country, talking about what you feel and your reality, you're going to lose something. People, jobs, money, family, you're going to lose something. But what pains me and hurts me the most is that the very place that we should be having these conversations and doing something about this is in church, and that's the place where we never talk about it. So, Saturday, I'm at home, it's the morning. My son and I were being bums, as he calls it. We weren't leaving the house. And my heart has been breaking for quite a while for moms and dads trying to explain Ferguson to their kids. The thought that had been in my head for a long time was that this isn't about Darren Wilson. But what was it about? And whenever you ask God to center you and to deal with roots, he'll do that. And so there was something that I wrote on Facebook, and I'm going to share it with y'all. And this is what it feels like. This is what was on my heart when I really dove in and said, okay, for me, what is this about? As I'm still trying to grapple with the mix of emotions and the questions surrounding Ferguson, one thing that keeps coming up in my heart is that for me, this is not about Darren Wilson. Darren Wilson could have been anyone. The fact that he is an officer of the law who is committed to protecting people, the fact that he made a choice that resulted in the ending of a life makes it harder to swallow. Was he in danger? Was he afraid for his life? Did he make a choice out of power rather than necessity? I don't know. I'll never know. But what I do know is that this whole painful experience has been handled in a very disgusting and distasteful way. From allowing Mike to lay on the concrete for 4+ hours. As a mom, if my baby laid on the concrete, dead, for 4 hours. To a group of folks too close to the issue deciding not to indict, and for everything in between, I could create a really long list of how many things Ferguson has done that has spat in the face of every person of color in this country and every person who loves people of color. And that is exactly what this is about, and the same thing applies to Trayvon Martin. It was about how it was handled. What this is about the mommies who are looking at their sons with tears in their eyes, lumps in their throats, and knives in their hearts, trying to figure out how to explain this. Mommies who have to explain at far too early an age how black boys should conduct themselves around police and how to behave in a way that doesn't draw attention. This is about finding the balance of trying not to break their beautiful spirits, but finding a way to keep them safe. It's about watching the wheels in their heads turn and their faces crumble as they begin to unwind the fact that they will have certain challenges that are unfair because of the skin they live in. It's about the fact that who they are is determined for them far before they even get to know themselves. It's about that. It's about the mommies who have to figure out how to protect their sons' personalities, uniqueness, and true selves from a societal image that rages against them on a daily basis. It's about the cringe mommies feel every time they're told by a white person how well-behaved their child is, as if a well-behaved black boy is an endangered species and they are astounded to witness it. It's about trying to answer the question why when your child comes home asking about race, things that you yourself don't want to give any thought to. This is about the mommies who live in fear of when their sons are teenagers, and for those who already have teens, and those teens want to go to the movies, the mall, riding around in their car without parents. Will they return? While they are gone, every ring of the phone turns into a torture device, and air feels like it finally reaches your lungs when they set foot in the house again. I feel this all the more as I am a mommy raising a black son. I dread him being a teen. This is about the fact that every time a mother, regardless of her color, raising a child of color, witnesses her friends who are not raising a child of color say things like reverse racism. This isn't about race. What do you expect when you don't listen to police or post things that attempt to further demoralize the character of the black man in question? Or when they focus on the looting and the rioting instead of the fact that a child lost his life? That hurts. What you are telling me is, whether you say it verbally or consciously or not, is that my son's life is not worth much. It's not bigger than the media hype. It's not bigger than the stereotype. It's not worth trying to find the truth. It's not worth letting the case go to court where a jury can decide. It's not worth respecting his lifeless body. It's not worth a handful of cigars. It's not worth me getting angry. This is about the daddies trying to figure out how to deal with this themselves, all the while teaching their sons how to be kids and eventually men. This is about the daddies who face conflict as soon as they open their eyes and conscious thought comes to their minds. This is about the daddies looking in the mirror and immediately feeling all of the pressure of family, society, stereotypes, media, self. This is about them trying to wear that weight all day long, not buckle under pressure, and quite frankly, stay alive. This is about the daddies looking at their little boys and wanting and hoping that they will never have to feel that pressure, but knowing that they will. This is about the daddies who are our protectors, but feel the devastating remorse of not being able to protect their own sons. This is about the daddies who've had to fight to prove who they are and have never felt taken at person value, but rather at skin value. This is about the daddies who always have to be 5 steps ahead in order to be compared equally to others who are 5 steps behind them. This is about the daddies who only see in the media that they are failures, that they don't take care of their kids, that they only know how to gangbang, that they're angry, that they have no skills, that being educated is rare, that they must not be up to anything productive if they are hanging out together, that they aren't dedicated to their families, that they only kill each other. This is about the daddies who experience this mental beatdown before they even get dressed in the morning and are not allowed to have a weak moment or be angry or fall apart. This is about the daddies who have harbored all of this for their entire life, and when they make a wrong choice or give up, they lose their life or they're sent to prison. This is about the daddies who watch movies that indicate the only way they can be saved is if a white person comes in and gives them something they cannot provide for themselves. This is about the daddies who are emasculated on a moment-by-moment basis. And finally, this is about our boys. This is about the fact that they have to earn the same things that their white counterparts are handed without thought. This is about the fact that our black boys are not given a chance, respect, or the benefit of the doubt in the same way as their counterparts. This is about our boys who are treated as if they are objects, animals, or a disposable item. They are left lying in the street for 4 hours. Their lives aren't worth arresting those who kill them. Their lives aren't worth rioting. They're not worth rioting. Their lives aren't worth getting real about an issue and taking the time to dissolve barriers. Their lives aren't worth staying on topic but can be watered down by saying, this isn't about race, this is about everyone. No, this isn't about everyone. Let me say this about our black sons. This issue right here, Ferguson, that's about our black sons. When we talk about genocide in other countries or sex trafficking, we don't say, this isn't about genocide or sex trafficking, this is about everyone. Stop watering down my son, his trials, the things he faces, his struggles with his own skin. Do not make this about everyone. It's not, it's about him. This is about treating our black sons like they matter. This is about others being able to look at my son when he becomes a man and not naturally feel afraid. This is about this is about not being angry if he begins dating your white daughter. This is about not treating him like he's a novelty. Anyone who's been the only black person in a group knows what that feels like. This is about him not having to endure jokes about his skin color just to fit in. This is about him being able to wear what he wants, how he wants, without feeling as though he's being judged. This is about him not having to consciously decide whether he's going to be himself or be who society wants him to be every single day. This is about him not having to wear one face in public and finally being able to take it off when he gets home. This is about that. This is about people who have never had the experience of being black in this country, having the audacity to open their mouths with an opinion that devalues the experience of a black person. This is about the lack of acknowledgement of his struggle and then being shown that if he loses his life, his body will not be respected, his community will be condemned for standing up for him, and his parents will never receive any closure. I didn't say conviction, I said closure. This is about that. This is not about Darren Wilson. I do not condone violence, but I do recognize that a nation that continues to not listen will eventually be forced. By peace or truth, it will come. Sometimes truth that continually falls on deaf ears gets messy, and that's what we're seeing now. Jesus flipped tables in a temple over what was being done there in Matthew 21, and that was about money changers in his Father's house. It wasn't about losing life. Peace is necessary, but those who want peace, those who cry for peace, like in Jeremiah 6, they must take the steps to ensure that peace happens, meaning listen when a nation is crying out. When this fails to happen, things break, people snap. This wasn't a surprise. Everyone acts like, oh God, we're rioting. Where have you been for the last 150 years? I don't know. The warnings had been shouted for many, many years. The warnings were repeatedly ignored. I'm actually surprised it didn't happen sooner. And now that the nation is paying attention for real, hopefully, maybe talks will happen. Maybe peace will come. In the meantime, I'm watching my friends divide. I'm watching white people divide against white people. I'm watching black people question relationships that they've developed over years. I'm watching people push each other through an invisible racial fence. This conversation can't be ignored. It's getting too dangerous. If we choose not to listen and find solutions or get real, it's going to get worse. People are tired. Patience and tolerance are no longer available in large doses. Our time has run out. And I'm going to close with this. I was thinking about why this is so hard. We talk about everything else in this country, but we don't talk about race. And when we do bring up race, we say, well, this is about everyone has experienced discrimination. Everybody has been oppressed. Everybody has. I'm not talking about everybody. I'm talking about the black men. I'm talking about my black son. I'm talking about my black skin. I'm not talking about everybody else. I'm talking about this issue here. Honor it by letting it be here. Give it the space that it needs. Stop adding to it. And why do we do that? Even black people, we do that. Why? And just as angry as I got about that, and God just said, because you all contribute to it. It's easier to talk about genocide because nobody here does that. It's easier to talk about human trafficking, sex trafficking, because none of us do that. We can pinpoint the individuals that are the problems for that. When somebody abuses a child, you can pinpoint that person. I don't do that, so yeah, let's get on the bandwagon and talk about child abuse. When we talk about white privilege, we talk about racism, we all, black people included, I'm not leaving us out, contribute to that. That's why we can't talk about it, because it makes us feel better when we say, well, it's everybody. I've been discriminated against because of my size or my gender or my age. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the issue of black and white. But because we contribute to it on a daily basis by what we buy, what we find important, where our priorities lie, what the media says, the things that we hold dear and near to our hearts, God forbid that we shake up our comforts in order to stand for what's right. Because of that, because we contribute to privilege every single day, we can't just leave it at black and white because we can't acknowledge that we have a problem. Because then we have to look at how we contribute to the problem. And then the question of risk comes in. Because once you become aware of where you contribute, now you have to decide, what am I willing to give up? What am I willing to risk? Who am I willing to piss off in order to stop doing what I've been doing? And none of us want to answer that question. Nobody wants their parents, grandparents, friends, coworkers, cousins, siblings angry with them. Nobody wants to say, I wrote in here on privilege this morning. No one wants to say, I use privilege to get to where I'm at. No one wants to say I use privilege to exclude somebody from being where I'm at. No one wants to say those things. We don't want to acknowledge that. And we certainly don't want to stand up for it. Because God forbid we're wrong about something ever. So I just want to close with saying my realization regarding why we can't talk about this as a solid single subject is because we do it. It's in all of us. And we have a responsibility to at least acknowledge it, to at least root it out, to at least look at it, and allow ourselves to be asked the question of what we're willing to risk. And know that you're going to fail miserably, regularly. It's going to happen. But if you're trying, and you're doing, and you have people that you trust that you can go to and say, I think I failed here. Or when you can listen when somebody tells you where you failed, then you're moving the needle, whether it feels like it at times or not. And then what you're doing is you're helping me have that conversation with my 8-year-old black son about why he's going to face the things that he faces in his life, why it's different for him. So with that, I'm going to thank you for letting me share my heart today.